A cat destroyed the same spreadsheet 7 times in 3 weeks. Every single time the Marine tried to balance his budget, the cat would jump on the desk and knock the laptop closed. It seemed random, it seemed annoying, until the 8th time, when the Marine actually looked at what was on the screen the exact moment the cat pawed at it. A single line item that had been there for 11 months, a charge he never questioned, a subscription he never remembered signing up for. $29.99 per month, $329 gone. Just like that. And that was just the beginning of what he found. Subscribe right now and smash that like button, because what you're about to hear will make you check your bank account before this video ends. Drop a comment telling me what city and country you're watching from. This is the story of David Martinez. David was 28 years old, former Marine Corps infantry, for years, active duty, deployed twice, honorably discharged 6 months earlier. He came back to San Diego with a plan that seemed solid on paper. He had saved $11,000 during his service. He had his G-Bill benefits lined up. He was going to enroll in community college for business administration and work part-time. While studying, textbook transition, the kind veterans are, told to aim for, stable, responsible, achievable. But reality hit faster than he expected. The apartment he found cost $1,400 per month. First month, last month, security deposit. $4,000 to $100 gone immediately. Textbooks for 2 classes cost $640. His car needed new brakes, $800. Insurance, phone bill, groceries, gas, within 60 days of being home. David had burned through nearly $7,000 of his $11,000 cushion. He still had no job. Classes had barely started, and he could feel the panic setting in. David was disciplined. Marines do not do chaos, they do structure. So he created a budget spreadsheet, color-coded, categories for every expense, fixed costs in blue, variable costs in yellow, savings goals in green. He tracked every single dollar. He meal prepped on Sundays. He canceled streaming services he did not need. He stopped going out. He applied to 15 jobs per week, retail, security, warehouse work, anything flexible, enough to fit around his class schedule. He was doing everything right, but the money kept disappearing faster than it should. By month 3, David had $4,100 left. The math was not adding up. He was spending less than his budget allowed. He was not buying anything unnecessary. But somehow, his account balance kept shrinking at a rate that did not match his calculations. That is when David adopted the cat. He was not planning to. He was walking past a pet store when he saw a sign, Senior Cat Adoption Event, free adoption, fees. David had always liked animals. Growing up, his family had 2 dogs, but he never thought about getting a pet as an adult, especially not now when money was tight. But something made him walk inside. There were a dozen cats in cages. Most of them were young, playful, cute, the kind people actually want. But in the back corner, there was an older cat, gray and white, sitting perfectly still, staring at nothing. The shelter volunteer told David the cat was 9 years old. Owner passed away. No family wanted him. He had been in the shelter for months. If nobody adopted him soon, they would have to make space for younger cats. David understood what that meant. He looked at the cat. The cat looked back at him. Something unspoken passed between them. David filled out the paperwork. He named the cat Gunny, short for Gunnery Sergeant. It felt appropriate. Gunny was quiet. He did not meow much, did not demand attention. He would eat his food, use his litter box, and spend most of the day sleeping on the couch. But at night, he would jump onto David's bed and sleep pressed against his legs. David had not realized how lonely he was until he had company. The apartment felt less empty. The silence felt less heavy. Gunny did not care that David was struggling, did not judge him for eating rice and beans for nights a week, did not ask why he was not further along in life. Gunny just existed beside him, and somehow, that helped. David started talking to Gunny while he worked on his budget, explaining his frustrations out loud. It sounds crazy, but it made him feel less alone. Gunny would sit on the desk, tail wrapped around his paws, eyes half closed, listening to nothing, and everything. Then the knocking started. David would be working on his spreadsheet and Gunny would jump onto the desk, walk directly across the keyboard, close the laptop with his paw. The first time it happened, David laughed. Cats do that. It is annoying but harmless. He would reopen the laptop and continue. But Gunny did it again and again, always when David was looking at the budget. Never when he was doing homework or browsing the internet. Only the budget. By the third week, it was happening almost daily. David started getting frustrated. He would put Gunny on the floor. Gunny would jump right back up. He would close the door. Gunny would scratch at it and meow until David let him in. It became a routine, a frustrating, inexplicable routine. David even mentioned it to his classmate. The guy laughed and said cats are just weird, that they do things for no reason. But David could not shake the feeling that there was a reason. He just did not know what it was. One Thursday afternoon, David was updating his budget after getting paid from a new part-time job at a sporting goods store. $12 per hour, 20 hours per week. Not much, but something. He was entering his income when Gunny jumped up, walked across the desk, and this time, instead of closing the laptop, Gunny sat directly on the keyboard. His paw landed on the down arrow key. The spreadsheet started scrolling, line by line. David tried to move Gunny, but the cat stayed put. Pressed down harder. The spreadsheet kept scrolling, past rent, past utilities, past groceries, past gas, all the way down to a section David labeled miscellaneous subscriptions. And that is when David saw it. A line he had copy-pasted from his bank statement months ago and never looked at again. Digital Wellness Premium Membership, $29.99 per month, 11 months of charges, $329 total. David stared at it. He had no idea what Digital Wellness Premium was. He did not remember signing up for anything with that name. He opened his banking app and searched the transaction history. There it was, charged on the 15th of every month since last April. Always the same amount, always the same vague name. David opened his email and searched for Digital Wellness. Nothing. No confirmation emails. No receipts. No welcome messages. He Googled the name. It pulled up a generic landing page for a meditation and productivity app. David had never used a meditation app in his life. He clicked on the facts section, saw a line about free trials automatically, converting to paid memberships, and then he remembered. Last March, right before he got out of the Marines, a buddy sent him a link, said it was a free app that helps with stress. David downloaded it, tried it once, forgot about it. He never realized the free trial was only 14 days. Never saw the fine print that said it would auto-renew at $30 per month unless canceled. David felt his stomach drop. $329. That was groceries for 2 months. That was his car insurance. That was the difference between his budget working and not working. He immediately went to the website and tried to cancel, but there was no cancel button, just a contact form. He filled it out, demanded a refund, explained he never used the service, did not even know he was subscribed. 3 days later, he got a response, generic, polite, unhelpful. They said all sales were final. Subscriptions were clearly outlined in the terms of service. No refunds would be issued. David felt rage building, not the explosive kind, the cold, calculated kind. He responded, cited consumer protection laws, threatened to dispute the charges with his bank, file complaints with the Better Business Bureau. 2 days later, they refunded the last 3 months, $89.97. The rest, they said, was outside their refund window. David sat at his desk staring at the email. Gunny was curled up next to the laptop, purring. David reached over and scratched behind his ears. He whispered thank you. If Gunny had not kept interrupting him, David never would have scrolled down that far, never would have noticed that line. He would have kept paying $30 a month for something he did not use, for something he did not even know existed. David felt something shift inside him, a question he could not ignore. If he missed this, what else was he missing? He opened his bank statement, all of it, every transaction from the past year, and He started going through it, line by line, charge by charge. What he found made him feel sick. A gym membership he canceled in person 7 months ago, still charging him $19.99 per month. A software trial for video editing he used once for a class project, $14.99 per month for 8 months. A subscription box for coffee samples his ex-girlfriend signed him up for as a gift, $24.99 per month, still active even though they broke up a year ago. When David added it all up, he had been losing $89.96 per month to subscriptions he either did not use, did not know about, or thought he had canceled. Over the course of a year, that was $1,079, gone, invisible, automated. David sat back in his chair and felt a strange mix of anger and clarity. He had been blaming himself, thinking he was bad with money, thinking he was not disciplined enough. But the truth was, he was being bled dry by systems designed to make it easy to subscribe and nearly impossible to unsubscribe. Systems that bet on people forgetting, on people being too busy or too tired to check. And it worked. It had been working on him for a year, but not anymore. David spent the next 4 hours canceling every single subscription. Some websites made it easy. One click, done. Others required phone calls, waiting on hold, being transferred, being offered discounts to stay. David did not care. He canceled everything that was not absolutely essential. By the end of the night, he had reduced his monthly subscriptions from $134 to $11. Spotify, that was it. Everything else was gone. Gunny watched the entire process from the desk, occasionally standing up to stretch, occasionally walking across the keyboard as if to remind David to keep going. When it was finally done, David looked at the cat and felt something he had not felt in months. Control, not over everything, but over this, over his money, over the things quietly stealing from him. It was not much, but it was something. And sometimes, something is all you need to start turning things around. What David did not know yet was that this was just the beginning. Because once you start seeing the systems designed to take from you, you cannot unsee them. And David was about to go much deeper than he ever expected. David became obsessed, not in a destructive way, in a focused, mission-oriented way. The same energy he used to apply to training exercises in the Marines, he now directed at understanding where his money was actually going. He created a new spreadsheet, more detailed than the first. He tracked every expense down to the cent. He categorized everything. He started researching personal finance, not the get-rich-quick garbage. The real stuff: compound interest, index funds, emergency funds, debt elimination strategies. He watched videos, read articles, joined online forums for people trying to build financial literacy from scratch. And everywhere he looked, he saw the same pattern. People were losing money to things they did not notice: subscription creep, hidden fees, automatic renewals. It was not just him. It was millions of people, and most of them had no idea. David started talking about it in his classes, casually at first, mentioning to classmates that they should check their bank statements. A few of them actually did. One guy found a subscription to a language learning app he signed up for 2 years earlier and forgot about. $16 per month for 24 months, $384. Another student discovered her bank was charging her a monthly maintenance fee because her balance dipped below the minimum threshold 3 times, $12 per month. She had been paying it for a year and a half without realizing. Word started spreading. People started asking David for help. Can you look at my statement? Can you tell me what this charge is? David said yes every time. He would sit with them, go through their transactions, explain what each charge was, help them cancel things they did not need. It felt good. It felt like he was helping, like he had found something useful to contribute. Gunny was always nearby during these sessions, sometimes sleeping on a chair, sometimes sitting on the table watching. People loved him. They would pet him while David explained their finances. Some of them joked that Gunny was the real financial advisor, that David was just the assistant. David did not mind. He knew the truth. Without Gunny, none of this would have started. The cat had become a symbol, a reminder to pay attention, to question, to look closer. David even started bringing Gunny to study groups. The cat became a mascot, a conversation starter, and slowly, something bigger started to build. A small community of students who were all trying to fix their financial situations, sharing tips, holding each other accountable, celebrating small wins. Gunny was at the center of it, quiet, unbothered, perfectly content to just exist while humans figured things out around him. Then David had an idea. He was sitting in his apartment one night, updating his own budget, when he thought about all the people he had helped, all the money they had saved, all the subscriptions they canceled. He grabbed his notebook and did the math. 17 people. Average savings of $63 per month. That was over $13,000 per year collectively. $13,000 that stayed in the pockets of people who needed it. College students, veterans, single parents, people working 2 jobs. And all it took was someone showing them what to look for. David realized he could scale this. He could reach more people. He opened his laptop and started building a simple website. Nothing fancy, just a resource hub. A checklist of common subscriptions people forget about. A guide on how to cancel them. A list of fee-free banks. Tips on reading terms of service. He called it Budget Recon, a play on military reconnaissance. The idea was simple. Know your financial terrain before you move forward. David launched the site on a Saturday. He posted the link in a few online veteran groups, in his class group chat, on a personal finance subreddit. He did not expect much, maybe a few dozen visitors, but within 48 hours, the site had over 800 unique visitors. People were sharing it, commenting, sending him messages, thanking him, telling him they found subscriptions they did not know about, sharing their own stories. One veteran messaged David saying he found $400 in recurring charges. He thought he had canceled. Another person said they discovered their insurance company had been charging them for a premium add-on they never agreed to. The messages kept coming, and David realized he had tapped into something real, something people needed but were not getting anywhere else. He kept building, added more resources, started writing blog posts, simple, direct, no jargon. Just practical advice written the way he would explain it to a friend. How to negotiate medical bills, how to dispute bank fees, how to use the G-bill effectively, how to build credit from scratch. Every post was based on something he learned the hard way or something someone asked him about. Gunny would sit next to him while he wrote. Sometimes the cat would walk across the keyboard. David learned to save his work frequently. He started joking that Gunny was his editor. That if the cat walked on a sentence, it probably needed to be rewritten. It became part of the routine, part of the process, and somehow it worked. The writing felt more natural, more honest, because David was not trying to sound like an expert. He was just trying to help. 3 months after launching Budget Recon, the site had 12,000 monthly visitors. David had not spent $1 on advertising. It was all word of mouth, all organic. People were finding it, using it, sharing it. David started getting emails from financial bloggers asking to collaborate, from veteran organizations asking if they could share his resources, from college advisors asking if he would speak to students about financial literacy. David said yes to everything. He spoke at his own college first. 30 students showed up. He talked for 45 minutes about subscriptions, fees, and the importance of auditing your finances. He brought Gunny, let students pet him, told the story of how a cat knocking over a laptop led to all of this. People loved it. The next week, another college invited him, then another. Within 2 months, David was speaking twice a week, still working his retail job, still taking classes, still running the website. It was exhausting, but it mattered. Then something happened that David did not expect. A financial literacy nonprofit reached out. They had seen his website, heard about his talks. They wanted to hire him as a community educator. $28 per hour, 35 hours per week. Benefits: the job was to travel to colleges, veteran centers, and community organizations teaching financial literacy workshops. It was everything David had been doing for free, but now someone wanted to pay him for it. He accepted immediately, quit his retail job, adjusted his class schedule to night courses, and suddenly, David had a career, not the one he planned, not the business degree path he thought he was on, but something better, something that actually aligned with who he was and what he cared about. And it all started because a cat would not stop knocking over his laptop. Gunny got older. His gray fur turned more white. He slept more, moved slower, but he still came to every workshop. David would set up a small bed for him on the table. Gunny would sleep through most of the presentation, wake up when people started petting him, purr, go back to sleep. Students started asking if Gunny would be there before they signed up for workshops. He became part of the brand, part of the story. David leaned into it. He started every presentation the same way. This is Gunny. He is the reason I am here. Let me tell you what he taught me. And people listened. Because it was not a sales pitch. It was not corporate training. It was just a veteran and his cat trying to help people avoid the same financial traps. That almost broke him. But not everyone loved what David was doing. Some financial institutions did not appreciate being called out. David had started naming companies in his presentations, banks that charged predatory fees, apps that made canceling nearly impossible, subscription services that hid terms in fine print. He did not do it to be malicious. He did it because people needed to know, but companies did not like it. He started getting cease and desist letters, threats of defamation lawsuits. David consulted with lawyers, made sure everything he said was factual, documented, defensible. He toned down some of the language, but he did not stop, because the truth mattered more than keeping corporations comfortable, and the people he was helping mattered more than legal threats from companies that built business models on consumer confusion. David also faced criticism from other financial educators. Some said he was oversimplifying, that personal finance was more complex than just canceling subscriptions, that he was giving people false hope. David did not disagree. He never claimed subscriptions were the only problem. He never said cutting $30 a month would solve poverty. What he said was this: you cannot build wealth if you do not know where your money is going. You cannot make good financial decisions if you are being charged for things you do not know about. Awareness is the first step, not the only step, but the necessary one. And for a lot of people, especially people who felt completely lost, that first step was everything. It gave them control. It gave them hope. And sometimes, hope is what keeps you going long enough to figure out the rest. 1 year after starting Budget Recon, David was invited to speak at a National Veterans Conference, 3,000 attendees. He was terrified. He had never spoken to a crowd that big. He almost said no, but Gunny was sitting on his lap when he got the email. The cat looked up at him, blinked slowly. David took it as a sign. He said yes. The day of the conference, David stood backstage holding Gunny in a carrier. His hands were shaking. He had spoken to hundreds of people by now, but this felt different, bigger, more permanent. He walked on stage, set Gunny's carrier on the table, opened it. The cat stepped out, stretched, sat down. The crowd laughed. David smiled, took a breath, and started talking. He told the story, the budget spreadsheet, the knocking, the discovery, the $329, the realization that he was not alone, that millions of people were losing money the same way, and that it did not have to be that way. He spoke for 30 minutes. When he finished, the room was silent. Then someone started clapping, then another, then the entire room, standing ovation. David felt tears in his eyes. He picked up Gunny, held him against his chest, whispered thank you. The cat purred. After the conference, dozens of people came up to David, veterans, active duty, military spouses, telling him their own stories, thanking him, asking for advice. David stayed for 3 hours, talked to everyone. Gunny sat on the table, let people pet him, absorbed the attention like he had done this his whole life. On the drive home, David thought about how strange life was. A year ago, he was barely surviving, counting every dollar, wondering if he made a mistake getting out of the military. Now he was helping thousands of people, speaking at national conferences, building something that mattered. And it all started because he paid attention, because a cat made him look closer, because he refused to accept that losing money to invisible systems was just normal. David kept growing Budget Recon. He added video tutorials, partnered with other financial educators, created printable guides, built a community forum where people could ask questions and share wins. The site went from 12,000 monthly visitors to over 60,000. He hired a part-time developer to help manage it, a graphic designer to make resources more accessible. He reinvested every dollar the site made back into making it better. He did not take a salary from it. He did not need to. The nonprofit job paid enough. This was not about money. It was about impact. And the impact kept growing. Budget Recon was being shared in financial literacy classrooms, referenced in veteran transition programs, recommended by college advisors. It became a trusted resource, and David made sure it stayed free. No paywalls, no premium tiers, just information that anyone could access. But the bigger Budget Recon got, the more David realized how deep the problem went. It was not just subscriptions. It was the entire financial system. Overdraft fees that punished people for being poor, credit card interest rates that kept people in debt, payday loans that trapped people in cycles they could not escape, student loans with terms people did not understand, medical bills that bankrupted families. The more David learned, the angrier he got. Not destructive anger, focused anger, the kind that fuels change. He started expanding his content, talking about systemic issues, advocating for policy changes, connecting people with resources beyond just budgeting, legal aid, debt counseling, mental health support. He realized financial literacy was not enough. People needed systemic support, and he was going to do everything he could to connect them to it. Gunny was there through all of it, getting older, slower. His joints were stiff. He did not jump on desks anymore. David bought him stairs, little carpeted steps so he could still climb up and be near David while he worked. The cat would sleep for hours, wake up, eat, sleep again. David knew Gunny would not be around forever. The vet said he was healthy for his age, but age was the thing you could not fight. David started appreciating every moment, every purr, every slow blink. Every time Gunny curled up next to him, he took more photos, more videos. He wanted to remember, because Gunny was not just a pet. He was the catalyst, the reason everything changed. And David would never forget that. 2 years after launching Budget Recon, David made a decision. He was going to leave the nonprofit and run Budget Recon full-time. It was risky. The nonprofit job was stable, predictable. But Budget Recon had grown beyond a side project. It needed full attention, and David wanted to give it that. He had saved enough to cover 6 months of expenses. He had a plan. He gave his notice. His boss understood, told him he was doing important work, told him to stay in touch. David's last day was emotional. He had helped hundreds of people through that job, but he knew he could help thousands more if he focused entirely on Budget Recon. So he took the leap, and he did not look back. The first 6 months were hard. Building a sustainable business model without compromising the mission was complicated. David did not want ads, did not want to sell people products. He experimented with a donation model. People could support the site if they wanted. Some did, not many, but enough to cover hosting costs. Then he started offering paid workshops for organizations, corporations, universities, government agencies. They would pay him to teach their employees or students. The content was the same as what he gave for free, but organizations valued the structure, the facilitation, the expertise. It worked. Within a year, David was making more than he did at the nonprofit, and Budget Recon was reaching over to 100,000 people per month. But success brought new challenges. David started getting offers. A major financial services company wanted to acquire Budget Recon, turn it into a branded platform. They offered him $500,000. David said no. They did not understand the mission. Another company wanted him to become a spokesperson, promote their financial products. Six-figure contract. David said no. He did not want to sell things to people who were already struggling. He wanted to help them. A publisher offered him a book deal, advance of $75,000. David considered it, talked to people he trusted, decided to do it, but only if he controlled the content, only if the book stayed true to the mission. They agreed. David spent 6 months writing. Gunny sat next to him through every page. The book was called Budget Recon: How a Cat Taught Me to Fight Back Against the Systems. Stealing Your Money. It was part memoir, part financial guide, part call to action. It published the following spring. The book became a bestseller, not because it was marketed well, but because it resonated. People shared it, recommended it, bought copies for friends and family. David started getting invited to podcasts, news segments, financial conferences. He said yes to everything that aligned with the mission, said no to everything that felt like exploitation. He stayed disciplined, stayed focused, stayed true to why he started. And Gunny was still there, older now, 13 years old, moving even slower, sleeping even more, but still present, still part of the story. David brought him to book signings. People would line up just to meet the cat, to take photos, to thank him. Gunny would tolerate it, purr when petted, then curl up and sleep. He had no idea he was famous, and David loved that about him. Then one morning, David woke up and Gunny did not. The cat had passed peacefully in his sleep, curled up in his favorite spot on the bed. David held him, cried, called the vet. They came to the house, handled everything with kindness. David buried Gunny in his backyard, planted a tree over the spot, a small oak, something that would grow and last. He took a week off, did not post, did not work, just grieved. People noticed, sent messages, shared their own stories of losing pets, told David how much Gunny meant to them, how a cat they never met had changed their lives. It helped, not in a way that made the pain go away, but in a way that made it feel shared. Like Gunny's impact was bigger than just David. And it was. David went back to work, but he made changes. He added a section to Budget Recon dedicated to Gunny, photos, the origin story, a reminder of why awareness matters, why paying attention matters, why small things can lead to big changes. He also started talking more about grief, about loss, about how financial struggles are often tied to emotional struggles, how you cannot separate money from mental health, from relationships, from purpose. He made Budget Recon more holistic, more human, and people responded. The community grew stronger, more supportive, more honest. It became a place where people did not just learn about money, they learned about themselves. 3 years after Gunny passed, David adopted another senior cat, a 14-year-old black and white female named Radar. She was quiet, independent, nothing like Gunny, but David did not want a replacement. He wanted a companion. Radar fit perfectly. She would sit near him while he worked, not on the desk, just nearby, her own presence, her own personality. David appreciated that. He still thought about Gunny every day, still missed him. But he also knew that Gunny's legacy was not about the cat himself. It was about what the cat represented: awareness, curiosity, refusing to accept things at face value. Those lessons did not die when Gunny did. They lived in every person who checked their bank statement because of Budget Recon, every person who canceled a subscription they did not need, every person who took control of their financial life. That was Gunny's legacy, and it was growing every single day. Now, 5 years after that first knocked-over spreadsheet, Budget Recon reaches over 500,000 people per month. David has spoken in 43 states, helped establish financial literacy programs in over 100 schools, trained thousands of educators, written to books. And he is not done, because the systems that prey on people's inattention are not going away. If anything, they are getting more sophisticated, more hidden, more automated, which means the work matters more than ever. David knows he cannot fix everything. He cannot change policy alone. He cannot dismantle predatory industries. But he can help people see. He can help them pay attention. He can help them fight back in the ways available to them. And sometimes that is enough. People still ask David if he exaggerated the story, if a cat really changed his entire life. And David always tells the truth. The cat did not change his life. The cat made him pay attention, and paying attention changed his life. That is the lesson. That is what people miss. They want a loophole, a secret, a hack. But the truth is simpler and harder. You have to look. You have to question. You have to refuse to accept that being exploited is normal. That is not a loophole. That is awareness. And awareness is the most powerful financial tool you will ever have. So was David wrong to build an entire movement on a knocked-over laptop? Some people think so. They say he oversimplifies systemic problems, that he puts too much responsibility on individuals. And maybe they are right. But David has seen what happens when people take that first step, when they audit their accounts, when they cancel that subscription, when they save that $30. It does not fix everything, but it gives them something they did not have before: control, agency, hope. And for people who have been drowning, sometimes hope is the thing that keeps them afloat long enough to find solid ground. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had a moment where something small made you see everything differently? David would tell you to trust those moments, because sometimes the smallest things change everything.